Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mice, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and check out our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. Check out our altar sleeves. Support the show by using the code MAGICMICE to check out for 5% off anything in that store. I am Evan Irwin. We get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey guys, welcome. You finished that quicker than I was expecting.
Ruben Bressler.
Hi, I've had the time to react.
Hey now.
So I'm lucky.
Give me that slow setup. We're going. We're doing this. We're getting spooky. It's getting a little creepy in here. It's time for spooks.
I am excited to talk about spooky magic cards and see a bunch of my spooky magic friends at Magic 30 this weekend, where I imagine many of us will be in Halloween costumes.
Yeah, I'm thinking about bringing my Waldo, but I don't want anything too crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I considered for a moment bringing my turtle shell and going as Archelaus, because I've never seen an Archelaus cosplay, and I think it would be hilarious. But that particular costume that I wear for LARP is impossible to sit down in chairs, so I think I will not do that.
Yeah, that sounds awkward.
Yeah, Cool Stuff has quite the presence. As I moved this year and I spent $1 million moving, I have no dollars to get me to Magic 30 this year. The boss man will be at Magic 30, and I have actually shared your guys' information with Jerry.
Great,
because you guys should say hello and hang out.
Absolutely, I will.
Yeah,
I'm
also going to go to the Magic 30 booth and sell some of my random boxes of stuff I have, because I get stuff from Cool Stuff. If I sell to them, right? I get
you sell $100 plus. You get both a Path of Ancestry non-foil promo, and if you sell 100 plus, you get the pin for free.
What was his full name?
Mr. Sunken, Jerry Sunken.
Literally just texted me 1 minute ago.
Wow.
Well,
actual text message 1 minute ago says, Brittany, I hope to see you at Magic 30.
Same.
Well, there you go. Now you know who to expect. But yeah, Jerry is wonderful, and you guys have fun hanging out with him if you can. That said, we begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Unfinity cards. Ruben?
Yeah, I was a little shocked at the end of our show when we didn't talk about this card. So I'm glad that Zook was able to provide us with the honorable mention this week. As a paper pauper player, I am most excited for Embiggen. Oracle has added the subtype Phyrexian to the infect creatures, which means this 1-mana instant gives +4/+4 to Glistener Elf, which is a creature Phyrexian Elf warrior, Blighted Agent, creature Phyrexian human rogue, Ichorclaw Mirror, artifact creature Phyrexian Mirror, and others. While it's not quite Invigorate, it is quite an upgrade from Might of Old Krosa and Groundswell, both of which can't be used to save your creature from a lightning bolt on your opponent's turn.
Nice. This card cracks me up so hard. Once you got it, why it is the way it is, let me get to it. Embiggen is a 1-green common instant that says until end of turn, target non-brushwag creature gets +1/+1 for each super type, card type, and subtype that it has. The hell does it say non-brushwag on it? Because this would be insane with changelings, but it can't be because of that one little thing. And my God, the explanation in the rules thing that they wrote up was the brushwag knows what they did.
Yeah. Very good.
Brushwag is like the little 1/1.
Yeah. You can pump to make them bigger.
The almighty Brushwag is the 1/1 that gets +3/+3, and then way back in Mirage was the first Brushwag, and that's the only Brushwags that exist. It's very clever way to cut out
the
changeling problem. Yeah.
And
so
of course,
clever.
Inkmoth Nexus gets +5/+5 now, because it's an artifact creature land.
Phyrexian.
Blinkmoth Phyrexian.
Good God. Yes.
I love that they know what they did, and it's the most adorable thing I think I've ever seen. That's going to be in my top 3 of all cute things Wizards has ever done. I didn't know about that.
I know,
There is
right?
another funny combo with Werewolf Pack Leader. That said, so Werewolf Pack Leader says it's a 3/3 for 2 that whenever it attacks, if you have 6 or more power, you draw a card. Right. But it has an activated ability that says that it becomes base power toughness 5/3, gains trample, and isn't a human. So if you replace all instances of human with Brushwag on it, you can then target it with an Embiggen, and then it's +1/+1 for every creature type. That's how you get around the changeling thing. I forget exactly what the card is that says replace all instances of one creature type with another one, but there is something that does that.
The blank the blank name Goblin is starting to point out a problem. Well, not a problem, but a situation with the way Unfinity is made. And Embiggen is very similar in that the Galaxy foil versions of these cards, even commons, are rare as hell. Like super, like 1 in 100 boxes, stupid rare. And so the Galaxy foil for Embiggen is already over $6 as of this recording. And my guess is it's going to be a hell of a lot more expensive many years from now.
Oh yeah, if it's legacy playable and it's that rare to open, then it'll be $1 zillion.
It's going to be very expensive. So that card is awesome. Thanks to Zook or Zuki or however you're supposed to say that for being a part of the show. Please contact us on Twitter at MagicMicesCast on our DMs for that prize, please. And thank you. And thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week. And maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate because it is time to get spooky in the land of the spooky. Because it is October and it's getting cold out there where I live now, which is awesome. Love that. And let's talk about some stuff that's spooky and weird. Now, I can't even start because my number 10 is higher on someone else's list. So, Nerd Girl, what is your number 10?
I do have number 10, and it's a super easy one. And I thought it would be a great way to bring in the spooky season. Just, pack one, pick one. What card do I think gives me the spooky vibes? And this one is definitely going to do that. It's a story. The art is great. The coloring is great. And it makes you think of all the spooky things possible. And that's going to be the Headless Horseman. And the art I picked is from Legends 1994. It has no text. It's just a vanilla 3 mana creature for 2. It's a 2/2. God, for 3 mana. God, why can't I speak? 2 colorless and a black for a 2/2 with some amazing flavor text about the Sleepy Hollow Headless Horseman.
That's right.
Back when we used to get book quotes on Magic cards, that didn't last too very long, but we did get them. And yeah, I think the Horseman was on my Halloween list because and it's just kind of hilarious. Like, this is like a weird, it's not on any reserve list or whatever. They could reprint it whenever they want for whatever reason, but a 3 mana 2/2 isn't getting anybody excited.
We've moved past Grey Ogre stats. I do like that it says Summon Horseman. That makes me very excited about this card, even though its creature type has been updated to a Zombie Knight, which is both relevant creature types.
It's not bad.
But what a gorgeous horse. I'm getting some, I definitely feel a little bit like a horse girl looking at this art. This is exactly what you want when you're a 13-year-old growing up in Texas.
That's a fabulous horse right there.
Look at that hair. That mane.
We also did kind of get a reprint. They just it wasn't a reprint. It was just a re-envision card with the Headless Rider, which I think is really cool because, it's like the sequel. He came back. He's scarier. It's like, in any scary movie, they're always crazier.
And if you ever look at this on Scryfall, there is a Magic Online promo, and the color saturation,
the colors they upped a lot,
is unbelievable. Like, Legends was so washed out, it's ridiculous compared. So I'm curious if that was the artist wanted it that way, or it was always that way and it just came out insanely washed out when it actually printed.
They ran out of ink, so they were just trying to cut the cost a little bit.
Get them corners wherever you can find them. Ruben, what's your number 10?
Hey, back-to-back Legends cards at our number 10. This card is so bad that I wanted it on the list, but I do remember this art. And the art is extremely creepy. The name is pretty creepy. Like, you couldn't go too far into actual terror, even though they had a card named Terror, back in the day. But Ghosts of the Damned had the word damn on it. And that was like a very unusual thing for early Magic cards, was to have that. Now they could care less. They've got, damnation. They called a card damn. But Ghost of the Damned is a creepy Magic card. And it's a 3 mana 0/2 spirit that taps to give target creature -1/-0 till the end of the turn. That is not a good Magic card. That is a very bad Magic card.
Yeah, I mean, Magic cards have come a long way, but, they were just sort of feeling things out, I guess.
In 1994 it was a lot. This was crazy in 1994. I mean, things are doing stuff and reacting and changing powers and toughnesses, and I don't know if I've ever seen this card in my life.
Yeah. I remembered seeing that card in a box of commons when I was very young.
It was like, what the hell is going on?
And be like, what? Yeah, why is this a thing?
Oh, there's a lot of that in the old sets. All right, let's move on here to number 9. And I have one, and it's great, and it's pretty freaking creepy as creepy goes. And, when it comes to the Eldrazi, they have tried to make them as weird and creepy and freaky and as existential horror or whatever, that you want to go for. But, in the middle of our Cthulhuing, sometimes you got to put your hand through the back of someone's head and grab their face parts on Transgress the Mind. You hold it on top and you go through and back under, and suddenly you have the whole head grab, and it's horrific. Transgress the Mind was an uncommon from Battle for Zendikar, a set not looked that fondly back upon, but it was a black and a generic mana for a sorcery that has Devoid, which means this card has no color, and yeah, that was confusing. Target player reveals their hand. You choose a card from it with converted mana cost or greater, or with mana value rather, of 3 or greater, and you exile it. So they were trying to do Inquisition of Kozilek on the other side of it, kind of, but they didn't want to cost just 1 mana, so it didn't really get there in terms of being competitive.
Highly disagree. This card was very competitive.
Was it?
This card was in Pro Tour top 8 decks. Oh, for sure. Because it could snag your opponents like Matter Reshapers and Thought-Knot Seers. This card was very good.
Emrakul.
Yeah.
But either way, it's a hell of a creepy picture.
Yeah.
I think Evan, when he was saying not there competitive wise, I think he meant like the staying power probably.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's
it didn't really get, like to this day, I'll play Inquisition. I don't go, man, I got to get Transgress in here, like.
That's a fair point. Yeah, it did not have legs after its time in Standard, that's for sure.
It's like a, Thragtusk or Siege Rhino or, any of the cards we look back on fondly that were definitely format dominating, but now nobody thinks of at all.
Right.
Bummer. All right. So Ruben, what's number 9?
Speaking of creature types that are extremely creepy, my number 10 was a spirit. In fact, my number 9 is a spirit, but it's a specific kind of spirit, and that is the Kami. The Kamigawa Kami are all creepy, and in various different types of ways, much less of an existential, but more of like an uncanny valley. Like things where they're not supposed to be, sort of just like misplaced arms and legs and eyes, and in this case, teeth. As I recall this card being absolutely fabulous in Limited, in addition to being just a pile of teeth, my number 9 is Pain Kami. Pain Kami is a 2/2 for 3, red creature. It's an uncommon from Champions of Kamigawa, and it has an activated ability of pay X and a red and sacrifice it. It deals X damage to target creature. Obviously, this was much better when damage was on the stack, but the art still holds up as just absolute nightmare fuel.
Yeah, the Kami are all very, very creepy in the original and now. That is not a surprise to see one make it onto the spoopy list.
Yeah, this thing is horrifying. And there's a Sandman, bad guy who's very similar in terms of having teeth for eyes and stuff, because that's always freaky. Go body horror. And you also really have to sort of explain to people, like, yes, it's certainly not that great now, but it was pretty decent when you could block a 2 toughness thing and then go kill this other thing and kill both with this 1 Pain Kami. So it was a very, very good uncommon in Limited at the time. But nowadays it's even worse. So you're like, it's okay. It'll chump block, maybe kill something, maybe. Okay, great. All right. Let's move here to Nerd Girls number 9. What you got?
All right. My number 9 is not a creature, but it is a card with a crazy, spooky piece of art that I think is something a lot of people think about when they think of spooky or Halloween or even Hocus Pocus. And I really liked that the art really matched what the card did as well. So we're going to talk about Sensory Deprivation. This is a 1 blue enchant aura, and it says enchant creature gets -3/-0. So in the art, they've sewn shut the eyes and the mouth, and sort of the idea that like you lose attack power when you like sew someone's mouth shut is really cool. And it's just really creepy.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. That's terrifying.
Yeah, when I was when I was a kid, there was Alice in Chains' Man in the Box video, which featured someone with sewn shut eyes, and the nightmares, they did show up. And yeah, this is crazy spooky. This was definitely on my short list, and I'm glad you guys have it here because that is about as horrific as you can get sometimes. Very creepy. All right, let's move on here to number 8. Ruben, what's number 8?
My number 8, I could have made an entire list of just Kami, right?
Mm.
I could have made an entire list of just cards from Innistrad.
Mm.
And it was very tough for me to not do that. And finding creepy in other places was a goal of mine with my list. And I do recall one of the creepier bestow creatures that I saw. A lot of them were weird, and a lot of them were, because they're enchantment creatures, right? But the creepiest one that I recall vividly is a Gnarled Scarhide. Gnarled Scarhide is a 2/1 black enchantment creature Minotaur, which was an uncommon from Journey into Nyx for 1 black mana, and it had Bestow of 3 generic into black. It can't block, and when it was bestowed, the enchanted creature gets +2/+1 and can't block. This card was very good and limited. Being a 2/1, you could attack early. It wasn't the fastest format I've ever seen in my life. And late game, you could make their biggest thing unable to block, which was super relevant as well.
Yeah, the bestow mechanic was really cool, and I like the idea of the flavor of bestow being kind of a creepy thing as well. I can see how that fits in the spooky theme.
Yeah, I mean, and there's you got the one arm is missing, which is unfortunate, obviously, and kind of adds to the menacing sort of vibe overall. But ultimately, I feel like most of bestow is a lot like the mechanic that was in Champions of Kamigawa, the soul shift stuff. It's like 1 mana too much. Like every single bestow ability, if it costs 1 less mana, we probably still talking about them in some regard today. But I think they were they're 1000% limited cards because we're not going to get close to making something that would be sort of ubiquitous. But it's cool. I think it's great, and I definitely get the spooky vibe going on this one. Nerd Girl, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is, I think, worse than my last as far as the feeling of the spooky season. This, again, is not a creature, but it is a scene that will take place during spooky season or horror movies or all sorts of scary things you don't want to find yourself in. We're going to talk about Claustrophobia.
Ooh.
This is a colorless blue enchant aura. Enchant creature. When Claustrophobia enters the battlefield, tap enchant creature. Enchant creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. This is a common thing we see all the time, but what we don't see, a common type of blue removal in Limited, but we don't normally see someone being buried alive with the flavor text, 6 feet of earth muffled his cries. And the look of terror on this guy's face, this is what nightmares are made of. Like, this is the thing that I can't imagine this. This is crazy.
Yeah. This is the first person perspective stuff that came out in Innistrad we'd never seen before, and we've actually really not seen a lot of since. Putting the player into the scene, and this does a great job of it, for sure.
There is, and you may have seen or heard some of the work of the Internet Historian, and this is on YouTube, and they make fantastic videos, and they made a video about 3 weeks ago, the first one they did in like 6 months or something, and it's called Man in Cave, and it is a whole long tale about someone who got stuck in a cave and has very much hints of claustrophobia and what happened when they got stuck there and how people reacted to it and what they did and so on. And I won't spoil it. It is a fantastic video, and it has all sorts of turns and things that you're not expecting. But either way, I love the feel is here. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you get the dread, you get the idea of why people feel this way in tight spaces, and I like it. All right, cool. So that's Claustrophobia. That's a hell of an aura. Now for mine here, I don't know how many hayrides y'all been on, but back here in the holler, we get the Hayrides, all right?
Mhm.
And so certainly for years and years and years, when Halloween came around, it was time to go on the Hayride, all right? And so the Hayride is where you're riding, and they have this little like path they ride through the forest most of the time, and there'll be stuff that starts chasing the Hayride with like chainsaws that don't have the chain on it and stuff, and people with knives and stuff to scare you. And what they would also do is they would normally kind of like, they'd mosey up, if you will. They would mosey up to these little scenes that they had placed that were, spooky and gonna like freak you out and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And so this card reminds me of that, which then puts me in the spooky mood because I could definitely see them trying to do something weird and freaking crazy, like as seen on Thought Scour. This is the original OG Dark Ascension Thought Scour with the guy getting his head drilled into while screaming with blood coming out of his eyes.
Yeah.
And that's the type of thing they would mock up and have, and it'd be like spaghetti or whatever running around, and it'd be silly. But I love it, and it just gives me all the spooky vibes.
Definitely haunted house vibes here. A lot more of the body horror kind of stuff. There's a famous haunted house or at least it used to be where I grew up in Maryland, where it was in an old shut down hospital that was like 10 stories tall, and it got progressively scarier as you went up. And like you'd go one level up and walk across, and one level up and walk across. And there was like the urban legend was that if you made it to past level 10, you got like a discount on something because it was so scary. I don't know if this is true. I moved from Maryland when I was 8, so I don't actually remember if this is true, but it is in my mind, and this is a scene that would be in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of spooky houses like that. I went to a TwitchCon, and it was actually on Halloween weekend. And they did it at like the Queen Mary, I think, in Long Beach. And they spooked out the entire thing. And there was a bunch of mini haunted houses and stuff. And I do not do well in those. Like, I sat out on half of them.
Yeah.
And the other half, I literally put my forehead to the person's back behind me. And at one point, I wedged myself in between Brian Kibler and Natalie Kibler, and I made her go behind me. And I like put my forehead on Kibler's back to like just not look at anything. I do not do well. No.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of horror. The movies that I like that are called horror, I feel like that is their secondary genre. Like, I don't like gory, I don't like, Scream or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I do like Get Out, right? I like Signs. There are movies that have horror elements. I like monster movies, but I don't like primary horror movies.
Yeah, I was a very sensitive child, and so I tried to stay away from horror. I would get nightmares from trailers. Okay, like sensitive kid, man, that stuff would mess with me. And so
Same.
yeah, it took me a long time to mosey up to anything horror at all.
I like things that are like kind of more comical, like, and I don't know of a lot of them, so this is gonna be kind of an old title drop. Sorry, my dog. The whole neighborhood's dogs are losing their shit. Like Idle Hands.
Yes, I've seen Idle Hands. Yeah.
So like
also like Evil Dead, for example.
Yeah. That I can manage. Anything beyond that, I'm just like,
right.
Yeah.
Evil Dead 2 is like the perfect line for me.
Right.
Completely over the top.
2 is exactly
but still
the right.
freaky.
Have you seen Cabin in the Woods?
Yes, it's wonderful.
I've heard about it.
That is a comedy horror movie.
Yep.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil is a comedy that is a parody of horror movies, but Cabin in the Woods is a comedy horror movie, and comedy and horror work really well together. Sorry, I'm going to nerd out about comedy theory real quick because it's just effectively the same genre, but with the knobs turned in different directions. There's a famous Mel Brooks quote that says that comedy is when you see your friend walking down the street and they fall down a hole. Horror is when you're walking down the street and you fall down a hole. And it's there's a very fine line there. But yeah, I think that there's there are certain cuts of movies. Like, I could foresee seeing a movie like Saw, for example. I like Saw. There's a cut of that movie where I wouldn't like it, right? Because it's so close to being a primary horror instead of a primary thriller.
Right. It's right there too. Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's
Alien
on the right side of it.
is another example that is like right there, almost a horror movie, but it's enough sci-fi and thriller that I'm on board with it.
Very nice. All right, let's move on here to our number 7. Nerd Girl, what is your number 7?
All right. I have a number 7. I'm missing my 6. My number 7 is a little bit of a lighter one. It gives the spooky vibes, but it's not necessarily as traumatic as the last 2 that I had picked. But I liked the scene, and I think that the story is the most important thing when you're talking about the spooky stuff. And that's exactly what we get with Eldraine and the Borrow Witches. 4 colorless and a black for a human warlock. It's a 3/4 that says when the witches enter the battlefield, return target night card from your graveyard to your hand. So I like the scene of these 3 witches, sort of iconic 3 witches in most lore stories. You're going to have the 3. But then also the idea that they're returning something back from the dead, which is really cool. You can see them brewing over their pot, and I love everything about the flavor of these little warlocks.
Yeah. I regret not putting witches on my list. I think that witches are exactly what we want when we talk about creepy. Because creepy is not scary, right? Creepy is not horror. Creepy is foreboding. You're kind of, like you said, you're kind of in on the joke with creepy. And the witches are always these sort of like, not benevolent, but also not exactly evil entities in these old stories, Hocus Pocus or Halloween Town, things like that, where, they are villains in a manner of speaking, but if you go to Baba Yaga's hut, you're still getting something out of it.
Yeah, it's the idea that they're not the villains, but they're definitely not the heroes. They're
Right.
somewhere in between, and that's what makes them really interesting, because you don't know, like, are they helping that person, or are they actually cursing that person?
Mm-hmm.
And you would not be surprised with either option. You're like, oh, well, I mean, they're witches. Like, I mean, what was you expecting, right?
I love playing hags as a dungeon master. I love playing hags. They're one of my favorite enemies to be, mostly because I get to talk like this, but also just the theory behind, like, what drives a hag, right? What is their raison d'etre? And oftentimes it's not to kill you. It's not even to hurt you. It's to use you for their own ends. And I think that that's super foreboding and a perfect example of spooky. And when you show up in the barrow with these barrow witches, that's what you're getting.
There you go. So, Ruin, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is a little bit more body horror-y, I guess. But also the feeling I get from this art is more of a sense of sadness, I suppose, rather than pure spook, right? And there were a couple of cards that I've talked about and we've talked about on the show that kind of have the sadness as the backdrop. Blessed Ghosts is probably the best example of this that we've talked about in the past.
Mm-hmm.
This is another ghost, and there's something just romantic, but also incredibly depressing about a ghost's existence. And the art that we see in Bloodied Ghost is exactly like that. Bloodied Ghost is a generic and 2 Orzhov mana, so a white or a black twice, and it's a 3/3 spirit, uncommon from Eventide with flying, and when it comes into play, it comes into play with a -1/-1 counter. And there were lots of ways to move -1/-1 counters and use -1/-1 counters in Eventide, and this is what this card does. It is also, a Wind Drake, so it was completely, perfectly playable. But the art here is something that is... It's a tone we don't often get. And Mike Dringenberg, who's most famous for the Talisman cycle, I would say, usually doesn't do art like this. It's not... This is like quite a realistic ghost. And I think that sort of adds to the creepiness of it.
Yeah, it's got a really unique look with the bloodstain, right?
Yeah.
Like, to have such a very white, light, ethereal, and then there's just giant bloodstain. And then the flavor text of only a knife left out for a fortnight in the hollow of a ghast bark tree can inflict a wound so grave. Like,
it's a Kithkin superstition. The Kithkin of Eventide are legitimately terrifying because they've got no pupils with those giant eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're bad.
Freaky.
Also, the more realistic you make a thing look, the creepier it ends up being. Like, once you get, the white sheet with the big old eyes or whatever, then it's more humor or immersive as opposed to more real. And I think that's what happens with like a lot of the body horror stuff is like as soon as you can actually picture it being a real thing, then you get really freaked out.
There you go. So
Absolutely.
for my number 7, there is sort of one of the main tropes. And for example, we talked about Saw, and spoiler alert for a movie that was made like 15 years plus ago.
Right.
The guy like saws his own freaking foot off basically, and that's kind of where it's at. What if Pinocchio went completely insane and started to saw themselves and scream while they did so under a treacherous urge? Because that's what you got in Planar Chaos. And this is one of those things where it's like, it looks bad, but then if you can blow up the artwork or just look at the artwork and expand it, it is freaky scary. And I don't know what's going on there exactly, but it's horrifying and spooky. And Treacherous Urge is a black and 4 generic mana for an uncommon instant. This is target opponent reveals their hand. You may put a creature card from it onto the battlefield under your control. That creature gains haste and you sack it at the beginning of the next end step. So it's take your stuff and kill it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever seen this card before. That's awful.
It is wild.
And again, we're doing that thing where we return it from the graveyard to the battlefield, which is the very spooky of the spooky.
And like it's a marionette with barbed wire. Like there's a lot going on.
There's a lot of good vibes going on with that card.
All right, let's move over to number 6. Ruben, what is your number 6?
My number 6, again, I want to differentiate horror and terror and like the heavier stuff from spooky and creepy and, a little bit more lighthearted. This is right there though, because the image of the indelible, there are many indelible images in The Shining. But one of them is of course the little girls at the end of the hallway, who are saying, "Come play with us." And the little children who are in the creepy environment are a trope of horror that is kind of playful but also terrifying, and we get that vibe in the Twins of Marrer Estate. Twins of Marrer Estate is from Shadows over Innistrad. It is a 5-mana 3/5 vampire with madness of 2 generic and a black, which means that if you discard it, you discard it into exile, and then you may pay its madness cost instead of having to pay its real cost, and you put it into play instead of into your graveyard. Children, where are your parents? Last words of Rieg the Wandering Monk. Yeah, that's terrifying.
Madness is such a good keyword for spooky.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. And there's something really beautiful and like haunting about the idea that like, you're like, oh, little girl, oh, is that red? Is that what? And that's where? Is that in their what? Where's the blood exactly? And then at that point, like it's too late and they've got you. And that juxtaposition of like children and the bad things, or like children's rhymes, nursery rhymes and stuff with bad things. There lots of people have explored that area of creepiness and it works well. All right. Nerd Girl, what's number 6?
My number 6 is my only higher.
Okay, then. I guess it is. Well, for my number 6, there is certainly an amount of horror and or like, sort of the spookiness that you can get when someone is doing something to someone that's either asleep or they are unconscious or they're in a coma or there's nothing they can do about it. And that kind of helplessness brings a whole spooky vibe of like this evil creature who isn't just, what are they doing and how are they doing it? And what is going on exactly in Nightmare's Thirst? Because there's a hand on a face and they're slurping out the good vibes and the bad vibes and something's happening there. And that creature is freaky and nobody wants that on them while they're trying to sleep.
Yeah,
This is pretty creepy, and Nightmare's Thirst is a black mana for a M19 uncommon instant that says you gain 1 life, and target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. It was a hell of a sweet uncommon and great and limited due to life gain, black-white life gain stuff, which was cool. But no, it's that image and like going through like the nose and like it's a lot.
Yeah, it makes me think that it's like a dream stealer or like a dream putter inner brain person.
Injects you.
But if you look at their hands, it does look like they are very, very distressed. Mm-hmm. But they don't have the ability to fight it, which is the creepiest thing. Honestly, the hand is what really sells it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell this person is asleep. I mean, anybody else get paralysis demons? Anybody else have the man in the hat stand in the corner of the room? Nobody else,
goodness.
just me.
Oof.
But yeah, this is that feeling of the there's something freezing you in place, and that's horrifying.
Yeah, I think maybe once or twice ever have I gotten that I woke up and I can't move yet type thing of that sleep paralysis, and that's a hell of a feeling. That it takes a minute to shake that. Let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, what's number 5?
My number 5, I'm hoping I get to cast for 5. It's going to be difficult to do so. But when I think creepy, the set that set the bar originally for me was Shadowmoor. We took this pastoral fairy tale land of Kithkin and fairies, and we turned it on its head. We turned it from dawn to dusk. And there is a, seelie to unseelie fae, and you get a very specific kind of vibe when you can't see the sun anymore, but you can still get some of the reflection of the light during the twilight hours. And through it all, we have one of the creepiest, not terrifying, but creepiest tribes in all of magic, the Scarecrows. And led by them all is Reaper King. Reaper King has the most unique mana cost of any creature in all of magic. You can either pay 2 generic and a white, or you can either pay 2 generic or a white. Then you do the same with blue, black, red, or green. So you can cast it for 10 colorless, or you can cast it for Wooburg, or you can cast it for 4 colorless, blue, black, red, right?
Right.
There's like a whole bunch of permutations. And programming that into Magic Online sounds atrocious.
Seriously.
It is a legendary artifact creature, Scarecrow. Other Scarecrow creatures you control get +1/+1. And whenever another Scarecrow enters the battlefield under your control, destroy target permanent, and it is a 6/6. It's harvest time.
Nice. I mean, I loved hybrid mana. I love hybrid mana in all its different ways. The 2 generic, and the fact that the only question you ever have is, what is the converted mana cost of that thing? And they just put it right there. I think that's brilliant. I would love to have more mechanics that have just like that one question, and that's how they answer it, is in the mechanics explanation, which is great. But the Reaper King is sweet. It hasn't been reprinted since Shadowmoor and or a Secret Lair drop if you got one of those later, and it's only worth about $5, but it is a hell of a creature and is creepy as all get out.
I like that the Secret Lair they didn't take away too much from the original art. It does look very, very similar, except for the head looks a little bit more pumpkin-y.
Right.
But other than that, I think they were very true to the original art. It's very creepy. At first, I kind of thought in the original art that his hand there was like a noose. And I was like, oh, that's creepy. But no, it is just a pile of sticks, but it is still pretty strange looking.
But the way they're curved and curled, and it's just like... Yeah, you can almost
tied
hear
together. Yeah,
you can almost hear this card, right? This like clinking and clanking and like rustling and all that stuff.
The head of the Reaper King, I believe, is the symbol for Shadowmoor.
There you
like
go.
that. It's a very sort of confusing set symbol of like what exactly is the set symbol? Is it a bat? Is it some tree or something? I think it's the head of the Reaper King. And so when they did the new Reaper King for the Secret Lair and we got the full pumpkin head, that's just a great way to change the card from its original inspiration.
Nerd Girl, what's number 5?
Okay, my number 5 is a simple one, but one that had to be on the spooky list because it doesn't do, it's not horror like Ruben was talking about, but it is the thing for spooky. What is the one thing that is sort of foreboding and scary and means trouble? A black cat. So we have a colorless and a black for a 1/1 zombie cat that says whenever it dies, target opponent discards a card at random. So the whole premise of like the black cat is when it crosses your path, it's bad luck, yada, yada, yada. So when the cat dies, it essentially does something spooky, which is super flavorful. And I like the flavor text of its last life is spent tormenting your dreams, which is exactly what a black cat should be doing. I love it.
I mean, Pet Sematary was a fantastic movie, a creepy book, really cool story. And yeah, the things come back from the dead, and that's not always a good thing.
Yeah, I love this card so much. What a good little boy this cat is. Unfortunately, black cats are the most likely cats to be given away and not picked up at your local animal shelters. So
I got a black cat. Black and white.
Well, if you're a goth person or a wannabe goth person, or you just feel like having a nice little being in your house that might terrify your neighbors and keep them away, Black Cat's a great choice.
Very nice. All right. So for my number 5, this was a card that, I was just looking through stuff and I was like, man, okay, I'll just, we'll pick some sets and we'll just go through and do the stuff. And I was, poking around Shadow Moors and Eventides of the world. And I came upon, I was just like, okay, I don't want just straight horror. I want, what's going to creep you out? What's really going to give you like, what the hell's going on there? I don't like looking at this picture. Because the way that the face and the menacing kind of overall tone is just incredible. I couldn't believe it. When you look at Lingering Tormentor, this is an uncommon from Eventide, and damn, Joshua Hagler just crushed it. This kind of like mask with a tongue coming out and this crazy like weapon that it has. Yeah, this is a really scary thing. I don't want lingering around tormenting me, please. It's a black and 3 generic mana for a 2/2 uncommon spirit with fear and persist, which means when this creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had no -1/-1 counters, you put it back with a -1/-1 counter on it. And, the boogeyman doesn't disappear when you close your eyes because it looks like that. Oh my God.
Yeah. That's terrifying. That is a truly spooky Magic card.
If that's in the corner of your room.
Is fantastic for the spooky, right?
Oh, yeah. Oof.
And persist and fear. I mean, if you get a card that has persist and fear, it better have art that's twice as spooky. And this pays it off.
Sometimes they come back. So, yeah, this card is just that, the tongue thing. I'm like, ooh, where is that going? Like, it's wild. Let's move on here to number 4. Ruben, what's number 4?
I don't like this card, but we should talk about it because it is the only entry I have from Unhinged on my list. And there was a cycle of, so what they did in Unhinged is it was a lot of in-jokes, but also a lot of like kindergarten humor, and saying the word ass is very funny. And there was a whole cycle of donkeys that were different types of asses, and the bad ass is one of them. And it has actually horrific art. Just absolutely disgusting. I hate it. I hate it so much. It is a 3.5/1 creature. That was another thing that they did in Unhinged. For 2 generic black for a zombie donkey. And it has the activated ability of pay a generic and a black and growl to regenerate it.
Yep.
This card exists.
He wanders the land in search of good ass. Oh my God.
That is creepy.
I mean, 2004, everybody. Yeah, so this is definitely weird and creepy, and definitely, I think there were regrets, about leaning pretty hard into the donkey thing. And this is a good example of why.
I get the good ass because he's a badass.
Oh, we get it.
But like, that's a little much for me.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot for wizards
to think if they should.
Yeah, but they could, and they did, and that's unfortunate.
Like I hear a good piece of ass in my head, and I don't like it.
No, I don't like it either.
That's where we're at. All right, I want to keep on moving.
In 1999, they could do something like this, and sometimes things don't age well. Sometimes
the set was released in
2004,
man.
Well, whatever. Sometimes things don't age well.
It's the early 2Ks, man. It was crazy. Nerd Girl, what's your number 4?
All right, my number 4 is the one I don't particularly like, but the art felt like it needed to be there. Plus the title, like the card title, is really puts you there, and it reminds me of all of the like TikToks where people do the spooky face paints and stuff, and they really get you in, where they use the black background to like make parts of their body kind of go away. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about Phyrexian Unlife. 2 colorless
10.
and a white for an enchantment that says you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life as long as you have 0 or less life. All damage dealt to you is through infect instead. So it just kind of prolongs your life, which is kind of creepy and weird. And you get this like the oil dripping out of their eyes, and it's so creepy. Yeah. It is a horror scene for sure. And it also looks like a porcelain doll, which are very creepy on their own.
Yeah, the porcelain and the bright contrast. This was my number 10. I love it. The eye bleeding thing is something no one ever wants to have ever, and it's like all over them, like they can't get it off, and like they're horrified at themselves, like they're looking at a mirror or something, you know. And there's a lot going on here that's really good. I
have played my fair share of Phyrexian Unlifes, along with another very creepy magic card, Ad Nauseam, which we might talk about later. Yeah, this is terrifying. I also have perhaps an unpopular opinion, but the way that my face is built, I can't open my eyes to expose all of my irises. People that can do that are super creepy. Like, people who can just, like, open and expose the entirety of their... You know people like this? Who can, like, they can open their eyes wide enough that it actually, you can show the whole circle of their eyes. That's not okay. I don't like that. I don't think...
I think I could see the whole circle of Evan's there.
I was going to say, can you see mine?
Can you do it? Yeah, yeah, I can, and that's not natural.
Now I don't know if I can. Now, can I do it?
It's not good.
You can harder. Stare harder.
It's funny. I can't look in the camera and do it and then, like, look at you guys. I don't know if I did it, but...
Not quite, but I think I got there. So, yay, creepiest
amazing. You did
cast member. Got it. But yeah, this card is hella creepy. And my number 4 is also very creepy. This is a card that, like, it was like creepy and it was like weird. But then I looked in further in the artwork and it got even like creepier and sort of grosser in many ways. But then it really just the chef's kiss of the flavor text makes Victim of Night just one of the creepiest, spookiest damn things, because it's not just the person, like, they're spilling all of their blood. There's absolute massacre behind them of the gore thing. For the card, before we get through it here, Victim of Night is 2 black mana for a common instant that destroys target non-vampire, non-werewolf, non-zombie creature. But the flavor text of, quote, "Do not touch a drop, not yet. I want to watch this so-called Slayer's last crisis of faith." From Olivia Voldaren. That is a hell of a quote.
That's a hell of a quote.
That's a lot.
The art's creepy, but that quote really makes it.
They go really hard with the Olivia stuff.
Yeah.
And she went hard.
Yeah. Olivia's actively terrifying. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not a cartoon villain. Actually a bad person.
Yeah. I never fully got the last time we had the, like, Olivia wedding video for the preview. So I never really quite understood it, but, like, they're dressing up the humans as, like, for wedding. Mm-hmm. So correct me if I'm wrong. Were they just supposed to be, like, cake toppers for them to eat?
I think so.
As part of the party?
I'm pretty sure. That's the implication, yeah.
Right.
I never really understood, but yeah, that was the creepiest. At first you think it's her wedding, and she's, like, crying, so I'm like, oh, maybe it's, like, an arranged marriage. I don't know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then at the end, it's like you go into the party, and you're the cake topper?
Yeah.
Cake topper? Like, they could have went harder to, like, show, like, blood come down the cake or something. Like, I can only imagine how hard. Like,
I'm pretty sure there's a new movie about this.
That sounds creepy.
Is it called The Menu?
I
think
have
that
no idea.
This is what this movie's about. Spoiler alert.
Oh, oops.
Yeah.
Check out all of our movie
Maybe
thoughts
it is.
from the pre-show.
But yeah, that's a terrifying quote. Most of it, like, the art is quite good. The title is quite good. The effect is quite good. But the flavor text on that one is really what makes it for me.
That's the spook factor really goes up. So let's move to number 3 here. Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 is another card in the line of when we talked about claustrophobia. The first-person perspective we very rarely get. And Innistrad was really the first time we really got it. And no card says first-person perspective to me quite like Village Cannibals. Mm-hmm. Village Cannibals is 2 generic and a black for a 2/2 uncommon human from Innistrad that says whenever another human creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Village Cannibals. You are in the bed pulling the covers up over your face as the cannibals stare down at you. That's horrific.
Look, all I'm saying is if I'm in bed and my foot's poking out of the covers, I bring my foot back in. I cover it up with the covers. You don't leave, little bits dangling. Otherwise, they'll get you.
That's how they'll
get
you.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's right. That's how that works. But
the cover will protect you. Yeah.
Of course it will, against all things. And village cannibals are not going to eat you, clearly, right here, about to take you piece by piece.
Mhm.
Nope. Not at all. Nope.
Yeah, you also have to turn the lights out. You have to run the last several steps up the basement stairs.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that the monster doesn't get you.
Because the demon's coming after your ankle. That's where
right.
it's coming.
You also
It's
have to
gonna
look
grab it.
behind the shower curtain when you go into the bathroom, or else there's a monster there.
Right. Could be right there. Breathing.
Could be right there. If you don't look, then there's a monster there. What else? You have to check the closet, obviously.
Closet check's good. Yeah, under the bed stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We learned that
This
one in
is-
Monsters, Inc., so.
Wow.
Slightly less spooky related, but have you guys ever been creeped out and felt like there was some like that you were a little paranoid of something swimming in the pool with you?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
not the ocean.
100%.
Like
There's a shark in the bottom of the deep
a
end.
jellyfish
Yes.
or something
Uh-huh.
in a pool, which
Absolutely.
is such a weird thing to. But in my brain,
Someone's gonna come get
That's
you.
another great one.
Yep. So, Nerd Girl, what's number 3?
All right, my number 3. I am for just a single card moving away from the mega creepy and scary, and we're gonna go with something a little bit cuter. It kind of reminds me of like the treat you'd get on Halloween, or like something that a spooky witch might give to you. Yeah, it's sort of like a poison apple theme, so it's not as horror, but we're gonna talk about Harmless Offering. It's a 2 colorless and a red for a sorcery that says target opponent gains control of target opponent you control. And it's a picture of a little cat, and its tail is a little snake, and it bites you, and then you have like a bandaged, thumb because it's been biting you, and it says such an adorable face.
Mhm.
So it gives me the spooky sort of, things are not as they seem look, which I think is adorable.
Yeah, this is a perfect. I mean, the story that this card tells is so good because the card Harmless Offering, the name and effect could have a completely non-consequential piece of art, and it would just be someone holding a gift box. But the story that this art tells, with the cat that's not really a cat, the injury that's already happened, the foreboding sense of what this is the beginning of a story, and it is just told so beautifully on this card.
And I just wish that the Donate Illusions combo can't happen with Harmless Offering, because Wizards doesn't make cards that punish you. Like,
Yeah,
they used to really punish the hell out of you if you couldn't keep up with a certain rat race or whatever that they decided to create. They don't do that anymore. So like, this card's neat and it's cool, but you're not going to get that super combo thing almost never, because Wizards doesn't make cards that like blow up in your face anymore.
we did get Demonic Pact with Harmless Offering, but it never really worked in Standard. It was too
No.
slow and clunky.
And there were like some disenchant guys, like when it entered
Right.
the battlefield, disenchant guys that were
Exactly.
well played, so it wasn't a big thing.
Yeah, but
But
it's I think it's okay that we don't have Illusions Donate. I think that's
we're
fine.
probably better off, to be
Yeah, we're
honest.
probably better off.
But it would be nice to have an option. So here was a card that for my number 3 here, this was a card that I was like specifically like, you know what? Not including that card. I'm not doing it. I know I could, but I'm not gonna. And I looked and I was like, wait, there's a promo version of that? Oh my God, it's the spooky, creepiest, weirdest damn thing. Oh my God, it's a Brain Maggot. The Brain Maggot, listen. It's first of all, it's 2 words you don't want to hear together, right?
Yeah.
You just don't. And secondly, the Magic Online promo went above and beyond, and then above and beyond again. And you can hear the squish, y'all. You can hear the squish just looking at it.
Yeah.
A Brain Maggot, by the way.
Go ahead.
It is a black and a generic mana for an enchantment creature insect. It's an uncommon, originally from Journey into Nyx. It says when Brain Maggot enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand and you choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card until Brain Maggot leaves the battlefield. It's a 1/1. So
If the Magic Online promo is up, please take it down. Whoever's editing this. I had it up on my Scryfall for half a second before I was like, yeah, I don't need to look at that anymore.
Squishy,
You don't
squishy.
like Brain Maggot?
No, I don't.
You ever seen Wrath of Khan? When he crawls in the thing and they're
I
screaming?
don't like it.
It's not
It's bad. It's
that
very bad.
If you only look at the swirly bit, it's probably fine. But then that's like
Only-
someone's ear or something.
Yeah,
Right,
but
that's what I'm saying. The
But
first
the
one,
Magic
whatever.
the first one I can put up with. I played
Yeah.
that in Constellation decks. The Magic Online promo I clicked on and was like, I can't leave that on my
Something-
computer screen.
Something's coming out of that ear. with a
No,
vengeance.
I don't want
And
it.
it's bad.
Oh, I never saw that one.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
real
yeah.
bad. It's
That's
real
what I was
bad.
talking about.
Oh.
You can hear the squish, y'all.
No,
I'm telling
stop.
I
you.
thought you were complaining about the regular one.
No, the
I was
regular
like,
one's
it's
fine.
It's okay. I
fine.
was like, I'm not doing the regular one. And then I
Right.
saw the
Well,
promo
I can
and I was like,
hear the other one.
I don't
Yeah.
like it.
Gross.
Yeah.
like it chitters, and
And
there
it makes
might be
like a
The
like
squelching noise. I don't want it.
squishy sounds.
yeah,
I can
like
hear
it's
it
deep
like
in there,
oh.
right? And oh god. All right, so we've all creeped ourselves out. Let's keep going here. For number 2, mine is my only other higher.
Oh,
So
wow.
somebody's number 1 was my number 2. Ruben, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is, to me, one of my favorite things about horror movies, certain types of horror movies, I will say, is that they never show you the monster.
Mm-hmm.
I like monster movies, and monster movies have their place. But once you see the monster, your imagination doesn't have to take over. And something that is very good about certain genres of horror is that the monster is an imagination figment invented by whoever's watching it. And once it becomes real, it doesn't, it stays.
Can't match that.
Yeah, you can't, it doesn't jive with what you have in your brain.
Right.
And one of the best depictions of this on a Magic card that really tells the story with a mechanic and is a beautifully drawn piece of art is Cellar Door. Cellar Door is a uncommon from Innistrad that is 2 generic mana and has an activated ability that says 3 generic tap : target player puts the bottom card of their library into their graveyard. If it's a creature card, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. And it, as I was saying earlier, you got to run up those last couple stairs. The basement's a creepy place. The Cellar Door is just a fabulous name, and it really is an evocative story.
And a lot of bad things happen in the cellar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want, like, specifically a room that is meant to be dark, underground, to have something glowing suddenly start. That'll get the spook meter going right there.
This is a Goosebumps cover, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's scary, but it's like scary for a 5th grader.
It hints at what could be
Yes.
very scary, and that's what makes it as spooky and scary as it is. Nerd Girl, what's your number 2?
All right. This is the best one. This should be my first. This is the spookiest card that I think exists in Magic. It's not like the art, I think, is the scariest, most real thing you will find on a Magic card that I didn't even know how serious it was until years later. We're going to talk about Blood Artist and the original art. Oh my god, this is the creepiest thing ever, which I will explain momentarily. Blood Artist is a 2 mana 0/1, colorless and a black for a vampire. It says whenever another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And then the flavor text says great art can never come without great suffering. Now, when you look closely at the art, he's painting a probably very soon to be dead woman in blood. And then the perspective that the card is from the woman that he is painting, who is laid out on his table. And then if you look closely in the background, you see bodies hanging and being bled dry for the art. And the flavor text of, like, great art can't be made without great suffering. It's not his suffering that is happening. It is the suffering of many, many others. And he's like, you're watching him take your blood and paint this, like, paint me like one of your French dead girls vibe. Oh my god, this is the creepiest art. It feels so real. Like, this is a thing.
Yeah, there's a special bit when you go, wait, what's in the background there? And they are upside down. Is that a bowl? And yeah, it kind of goes from there.
Yeah.
Incredibly creepy.
There is a curse in that set. Curse of Oblivion.
Then that was what this was, right?
That
That's what they were painting.
I think is the person being painted. At least that's the rumor. Or it might just be a coincidence. I don't know that it's exactly the same. But it certainly looks quite familiar. And yeah, the perspective again is perfect with the paint cups off to the sides and the woman in the background upside down. Just absolutely horrific.
Yeah, it's super duper creepy, and Johannes Voss really just like killed it with that one.
They should never. This art should never be redone. Like they've
Well,
had several different versions of it since, and I think none of them are up to snuff.
Yep.
None of them really reach that level that's as wild and creepy as the first one. And, from quality of life purposes, they did update it on Arena, so you don't have to click on the person's face every single time, because you're not going to do that with Blood Artist. You're going to drain your opponent. So, appreciate it. All right, let's move here to our number one. Nerd Girl, what is your number one?
All right, my number one. Oh my God, you went straight back to me again.
I did, because I think my number two is Ruben's number one, so... We'll see.
You throw me off with this every time,
I
Evan.
know. You got to keep on the toes.
My number one got the honorary slot. It doesn't... Like I said, I think Blood Artist was my honorary number one, but this is the card that is all spook. And it's like sort of light and playful, and it is exactly what I want and what spooky season wants to be, and that's on All Hallows Eve.
Nice.
2 colorless and a black for a sorcery. It's got a little pumpkin and a little like tiger thing, as well as like a spooky wispy spirit in it. I love all the vibes that we're getting so far. And it says put 2 counters on this card, remove a counter during your upkeep. When you remove the last counter from All Hallows Eve, all players take all creature cards from their graveyard and put them directly onto the battlefield. Treat those creatures as though they were just summoned. You choose the order they come into play. So it's sort of like on All Hallows Eve, everything rises from the dead, which is super cool and flavorful. And yeah, it's got a great name, great ability, and cute art.
This thing is $500. You know how many stupid copies of this garbage card we had hanging around back in the day? Like, it was nothing. This card was bad. No one liked this card. No one played this card. But suddenly, the effect, the fact that it exiles itself with a screen counter. Nice update there, Wizards. That was nice. It's just ridiculous. And the fact we can't reprint it means this is going to be $500 plus forever and ever.
And it's a shame, because this card is very cool and a very like casual card.
It's neat.
It kind of has Suspend a little bit.
Yeah, it was Suspend before Suspend came out.
Yeah, and I think that the foreboding nature of it really comes through. The art is perfect. And yeah, it's great.
Goodness. And we're never going to get it. Maybe we'll get a proxy version at some point, huh? Ruben, what is your number one and my number two?
Yep. So my number one, it feels like I'm cheating to put this at my number one, because the whole point of this card is to be spooky, right? Like it understood the assignment, it followed the assignment. It wasn't accident. There was nothing accidental about what happened here. But the assignment was followed. Matt Stewart absolutely killed it with Creepy Doll.
Yeah, Creepy Doll is got a doll with scissors ready to cut you. And this is another like first person type thing.
Your number 6.
Your number 6 was absolutely fantastic. So, Nerd Girl, tell us what Creepy Doll does.
I didn't have it up.
That's okay, I will. It's a 5 generic mana for a 1/1 rare artifact creature construct that is indestructible. And when it deals combat damage to a creature, you flip a coin. If you win the flip, you destroy that creature. And so, there was not a lot of coin flipping just period Magic anyway. So this was kind of odd there. And it definitely, I think, was priced to the point where they didn't want it to be a thing. They don't want coins on Pro Tour tables. So this is neat and weird and cool for limited, constructed, and casual.
This thing was absolutely insane in limited.
It was nuts.
It took over the board in limited.
Yeah, 50% of the time your stuff's dead.
Yeah.
What?
Yep. And it's also just got the creepiest art. Like, so again, you can't really quite tell, but it's got that sort of first person perspective, and it looks like she's cutting the head off of another doll, possibly, which is very creepy.
Yep.
And then the one
in
the background's like dead.
Yeah.
Like, is she murdering all of them? I can't really tell.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. If you've never seen Coraline, it is hella creepy, and it gives a lot of Coraline vibes on this one.
Yeah, I mean, the doll that comes to life is a long and illustrious horror movie trope, from Chucky to the new movie Megan. There's a bunch of them out there, and this pays it off. I mean, we want the tropes. We want those horror tropes, and we finally got them with Innistrad, and this is one of the best executions, no pun intended, of them.
Well, look, if I'm gonna go number one, all right, if I'm gonna bring it old school, spooky, creeptacular, we're going to Alpha, y'all. All right, we're going all the way back because they spooked us first thing. And that was really one of the cool parts about Magic was the artwork was just crazy. So, certainly back in the day, it was wild. You never knew what was going to pop out of a booster pack, basically. And at one point, if you really take a look at some horrified person has probably some terrible disease and curse, and there's sores all over the body, and the spit's falling out of their mouth because the pestilence is on them. And for 2 black and 2 generic mana, it is a enchantment that says at the beginning of the end step, if no creatures are on the battlefield, you sacrifice it. And for 1 black colon, it deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. And this being a common has basically run rampant in Pauper ever since Pauper's been Pauper. And the idea that it deals the damage, so something with protection from black or something you can prevent damage with, will let this keep going. And that's just a scary ass looking dude on Pestilence.
Yes, Pestilence. Anytime they do this sort of like creepy art of like a thing getting you, it's always very well done.
Yeah.
Too good.
All of the arts to Pestilence are iconic, I feel, at this point. I really started my limited gameplay with Urza's Saga, and obviously Mono Black and Urza's Saga was insane. And Pestilence was a big reason why. Pestilence at common in Urza's Saga was a big reason why. But yeah, the original art was reprinted a bunch and is now in the 30th edition. So you can open packs with this horrifically terrifying art.
Right there in the common slot. All right. Well, that was our top 10 spooky cards. You'll see them on screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you, and happy Halloween. Stay safe out there.
Woohoo.
Enjoy. And just no razor blades, please, and thank you.
Oh, geez, Evan.
Oh, goodness. Oh, I mean, apples in the thing, and there was all this selling.
I think that's an urban legend.
Of course it is. Everyone's going to do that. As we move over to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHorder.com and AlterSleeves.com, my co-host, MTG Nerd Girl and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching and listening, and hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.